Peace be upon you all. Welcome in the series of the lectures of the Strategic Studies Unit at the Arab Center for Research and Studies. The title of our lecture is War on Gaza and its implications, regional and national, presented by some of our researchers and experts in the international relations and in the field of studies. I start with Dr. Mahjoob Zweiri, and I introduce him. He is the director of the Center for Gulf Studies and the professor of Gulf and Iranian Studies in the Dirasat program, Gulf at Qatar University. He worked as an associate professor and head of the history program at the University of Qatar from 2011 to 2016, research fellow and director of the Center for Iranian Studies at the Institute Islamic and Middle Eastern Studies at Durham University, UK. He has published more than 90 publications in Iran, the contemporary Middle East, and its policies, and the role of social and human sciences. Dr. Mahjoob, he will talk about the deterioration, the impacts of the. We have Dr. Leila and Dr. Saban Kardas. I will talk to them. Who will talk about Turkey later on. Dr. Mahjoob, the floor is yours. Peace be upon you all. Thank you, Mr. Muhammad, for the invitation, and I would like to thank the Arab Center for this generous invitation. In fact, when we talk about the war on Gaza, there is a need to diagnose why did we reach this phase, and why did the Palestinian issue reach this situation after about 30 years of Oslo agreements. There are three key elements that may help us understand what the Netanyahu government did over the last 15 years. There are three main pillars that the Netanyahu consecutive governments relied on, that would take us into a stage which is not less than what we are witnessing now. Israeli policies depended on to deviate the interest from the Palestinian issue, and here Iran was called as of 1966 as one of the main issues in the Middle East, and also to create realities on the ground, so that ever since 1993 to 2023, the number of settlements have increased in the West Bank from 172 with 242 southern citizens to 404 settlements where more than 1 million settlers. This is a reality on the ground that Netanyahu's government has created. The third factor, which is the marginalization of the Palestinian issue, and this fragmented that with some of the political developments, and this has been programmed by many instruments, such as normalization away from the Palestinian issue, Israel as a security alternative for those who have any security concern, and also to killing the project of the Palestinian Authority gradually, and enhancing the idea of the Palestinian division, so that there will not be any Palestinian partner to what is called the peace process. These are the main three pillars that have placed the things as they are now, and has made the confrontation from 2014, 2008 to break through, and to that Israel has become in the position of the weaker, or not the initiator or the controller of the events over the past 30 years. In this situation, what has helped for creating this reality? First, let's remember that Netanyahu came with the project of the Jewish state in 2009. And the project of the Jewish state, part of which is to create realities on the ground and to make Israel is remarkable, or something which is unique about its demographic population, as something which enhances settlement in the West Bank. Number two is to work to demonstrate a great Israeli resilience to benefit from changing the balance of powers in the region. For example, before the year 2010, the state, Egypt was a strong state. Saudi Arabia, Syria were strong countries. But after the Arab Spring, Israel tried to present a kind of resilience to deal with the situation. And with this case of Arab polarization and the Emirati Saudi standpoint from the Arab Spring, the division about the Arab Spring, Israel started to position itself in the shape that it serves its interest, and therefore it started to present itself as an alternative to countries that have any security concern, and as an economic power, and at the same trying to fail any attempt to merge to any other Arab countries benefiting from the narrative of the Arab Spring. And the best example was the division in Egypt. All this has been an important factor that made Israel pushing towards a clear solution, that the whole Palestinian issue must be absent, and all the solutions that are present on the table in light of the Security Council resolutions must be marginalized, and the narrative of the Palestinian people to be as a minority within its land, and gradually, and Israel, if it is not an occupied state, or it will create a new reality, such as the village connections that was, or village associations that used to exist between 2000 to 2009. And this takes us to raise the following questions. What was going on in the region? And I go back to the question of Mr. Muhannad's question. Iran was called to this conflict. The Iranian narratives used to make the Palestinian issue is an important issue, and the Palestinian people are vulnerable and under occupation, and therefore it rejects the existence of Israel. And Khomeini said Israel must be eliminated from the map, and it started to build its foreign relations based on this principle. Regardless of the political current, whether it is Fatah or Hamas movement after the 1989 or the Islamic Jihad, Iran was able to strengthen its relation with all Palestinian factions and the fronts, and the authority, the Palestinian Authority, and in Iran there were representation offices for these Palestinian movements, regardless of the anger of any party in the region. And this was one of the controversies of the Arab countries in 2008, 2014, and the accusations which were directed to Iran in this context. What has happened in this war, for example, the first time Iran behaved differently based on the three principles. First, the basic and the main principle that Palestine and Gaza in particular is an occupied region, and Hamas has the right to respond and to resist the occupation. And this course, or this narrative, has been repeated by so many of the Iranian leave it. Okay. And you remember the many repeated visits by the Iranian foreign minister to some of the Gulf countries, direct talks with the Americans, so that to present itself as a player which is able to provide solutions and to change things on the ground. The second thing that the Iran's call to not to escalate the conflict and to be confined, provided that Israel must respond to the demands of the resistance, the Palestinian resistance. And add to that, the internal front in Iran remained supportive of the regime, and they are available and they are ready to receive sick people and the injured from Palestine. And this is a heavy burden on Iran in light of the international polarization, and this relates to the nationalism and reformers within Iran. So it must take rest from the regional policies, which is quite exhausting to it. During this period, we may have noticed that Iran remained interested in one issue. It supports the resistance and it wants the war to end. It doesn't want Israel to be victorious, and at the same time, in order to curb the American policy in the region, which features the double standards policy. Let's remember there is a personal war between Netanyahu and Iran. Netanyahu provided all his political alternatives to have a war against Iran. He assassinated many Iranian scholars. He hit the other establishments in Isfahan and other regions in Iran as a prime minister. And consequently, Iran would be very happy to insulate or to abuse Israel or to insulate or to dehumanize Israel through or by the Palestinian resistance, in particular Hamas, which it supports and is important for Iran. This is very important for the Iranians, and that Israel is subject to weakness as for the narrative of the Iranian narrative. The other point is that, or what is important here, that Iran, despite about its arms, the Houthis and Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Hezbollah try to wash out its hand about the topic that relates to Gaza. And that was a controversy because all of us expected a more advanced position from Hezbollah. And all the war, especially the Hezbollah, took part in most of the wars that took place in Syria. And also the fear of the internal insecurity in Lebanon, and that would made the Hezbollah one of the losers in the war. Therefore, it considered that is a taboo, and it is as a military tank for the Islamic resistance movement Hamas. And some of the Iranian authors says that this war has helped us to bring Iran or to position Iran as a good player in the region. The other point is that what is going on in the Bab al-Mandeb Strait, whether Iran has a relation to what is going on at Bab al-Mandeb Gate. This relates to the Iranians' idea to exhaust Israel and the supporting countries, and the delay in the solution because Iran thinks that the war will not go for long. So they put this paper aside to see whether the war will stop early. Using this paper indicates two things. First, the Houthis have the right to take decisions, but also emanating from their interest, and still they are non-state actors and not recognized by many countries in the world, and they took power by force. The second issue is that the areas where Iran can work or are common areas, or and what they did by the paper or by pen and paper is quite exhausting for the Western economy and the world economy. And if this sustains, it will change it to, and also it will affect merchant shipping in Suez Canal. And this also raises many questions on what now is going on in Bab el-Mandeb. The 7th of October has been or is a phase where the Palestinian issue has been re-identified regionally and internationally, and also the conflict or the real conflict fronts have arisen after many wars. Now, this conflict can be identified. It goes beyond the Israeli hegemony to other frameworks by the hand of other players presenting new narratives away from the Western opinion about what happened on the 7th of October. And in order to re-identify the Palestinian issue as a lost occupation in the 20th century, and where a lot of violations of human rights, and there is absence for of the human standards and criteria that the West and the United States claim. So this achievement or this development will reconsider many of the issues about the Palestinian question and to identify the roles of other players in the region. I conclude with a very important note here. What has happened has not affected the Saudi-Iranian relation. In the previous wars, always the Iranian-Saudi relation was facing a great crisis. This is the first time that the difference in position between Saudi Arabia and Iran are different. Both countries are going to China, and they are conducting the first collaborative meeting. And this is an indication that Saudi Arabia has become less cruel or less reluctant for the Iranian positions, because they started to understand that each country has its own accounts and interests. And this will raise a great discussion in the upcoming phase. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Doctor, for this presentation, which is a comprehensive one and a good one for what happened after 7th of October and the role of Iran. We have questions for sure, and the attendees and the audience have also questions through the audience attending here and the social media about the role of Iran, and I'm sure that everybody has questions. Now we go to the second lecture, which is for Dr. Leila Seurat. She will be speaking about the transformation of Hamas during the last decade and what happened to Hamas in their external affairs policies. And Dr. Leila is a researcher in the Arab Center for Research and Policy Studies in Paris. And she has a doctorate from the Institute of Political Studies in Paris in 2014. Her doctorate thesis examined the foreign policy of the Islamic resistance movement Hamas, and her postdoctorate research, she studied security policies in Lebanon. She taught the sociology of international relations and the political sociology of Arab countries at Sciences Po, and the contemporary Middle Eastern history of the Institute of Language and Civilization at Paris. And she is the author of the book Hamas Foreign Policy, Ideology, Decision-Making, and Political Supremacy in 2022, and co-author in the Ontology of Arab Political Thought. Dr. Leila, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Muhannad. Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank the strategic unit for inviting me to the discussion. I'm going to focus first on the recent evolution of Hamas that could give us maybe a better understanding of the 7 October attack. and then try to give some elements connecting Hamas with the broader regional and international context. So I think to fully understand the 7 October attack, we should point out two different processes which both indicate that Hamas has gradually distanced itself from external state support. The first process concerns Hamas' legitimacy. Hamas has progressively realized that the legitimacy will not come neither from external state support nor from diplomatic ties, or even through the Palestinian official institutions, namely the Palestinian Authority. In 2014, Hamas has undergone a crisis which pushed it to renew its strategy at many levels. At the level first of governments, since on several occasions the movement has shown its desire to stay away from official governments. This is the case in both reconciliation agreement in 2014 and 17. Hamas has also renewed its strategy at the level of armed resistance. Yahya Sinwar's arrival in power in 2017 enabled this change in strategy, since his own, let's say, personality made it possible to silence first potential dissident in Gaza, and also to create a form of harmony between the political leadership and the Al-Qassam brigades in order to renew military tactics. So I think the March of Return was an important experience to look at, with an attempt to diversify peaceful and military means. But this strategy fails to generate international sympathy, even though it is important to stress that the March of Return was launched at the time of the American embassy move to Jerusalem. But the marchers also failed to lift the blockade or even to win the consent of the Palestinians, who continue to criticize Hamas for using armed struggle only to obtain some material gains and compensation for the Gaza Strip. So since then, what really counts for Hamas is to bring Gaza out of its isolation and to connect this territory with the rest of Palestine by mobilizing the armed struggle in response to aggression against Palestinians in Jerusalem and in the West Bank. The turning point, of course, of this, the implementation of this strategy is May 2021 with the Battle of Jerusalem, the Jerusalem Sword, which enabled Hamas to respond to a broader context of mobilization in Jerusalem and to position itself as the actor best able to defend the Palestinians. And again, it is important here again to stress the international context of the Abraham Accords. And to a large extent, we can say that the move toward normalization allow to understand the 7 October attack. So Hamas has progressively fully understood that the only political player in Palestine who will be important and will succeed in gaining the legitimacy from the people is the one who will gain the heart and the minds of the people, is the one who will confront concretely the occupation on the ground. The second process, which is important to understand the 7 October attack, is the autonomy of the Gaza leadership vis-à-vis the outside leadership, which used to dominate the decision-making processes, including the decision over the foreign policy and the war and peace. So how can we understand the shift of balance of power within the movement? This shift happened gradually since the middle of 2000, when the Gaza leadership began to claim more decision-making power. In 2006, Hamas in Gaza was able to run a government, both before and after the shift in 2007, and was also able to diversify its economy by imposing different taxes and making Gaza much more independent from the Damascus-based leader. Then the Arab uprising, of course, in 2011 accelerated the centralization of power in Gaza because the external leadership was weakened by its departure from Damascus. Khaled Meshal, who has strongly criticized Iran and Hezbollah for their involvement in the war in Syria, was punished by the Islamic Republic, which suspended its financial support for Hamas for a time. And on the contrary, the Gaza leadership considered this change of alliance as problematic and managed to maintain strong links with Iran. This is particularly true for the Al-Qassam members who traveled to Tehran whenever possible. And in 2013, 3 members of the Al-Qassam brigades joined for the first time the political bureau of Hamas, illustrating this shift in the balance of power in favor of Gaza. So in the middle of the crisis between the Iranians and Khaled Meshal, the armed wing continued to benefit from the Iranian economic and military support, and became quickly the main interlocutor of the Iranians. Yet we should maybe say that the Iranian support to Gaza, if it explains partially the shift in the power dynamics within Hamas, this support does not imply an Iranian domination over Hamas, which remain independent both strategically in its strategic choices and in the conduct of the war. And the 7 October attack is in a way a proof of this autonomy, since the Iranian did not coordinate the attack with Hamas, and also where Hamas military tools are largely homemade weapons. So Hamas knows perfectly also well that Iran needs to support its movements, perhaps more than the other way around. Therefore, 7 October can be seen as the result of one, regional and international context towards normalization, 2, a shift in the balance of power within Hamas, which has gradually tipped over in Gaza to the point that the leader in Qatar were not aware of such an attack. And 3, Hamas' progressive awareness that the movement legitimacy will not be achieved through diplomacy or governments, and that all the efforts must be deployed in the field of armed struggle. So now we have shown how Hamas gain more and more autonomy from external states. We should also notice that at the regional level, the political actors who confront Israel are also non-state actors. I use this category of non-state actors only to stress the difference with the Arab states and to contrast with the incapacity of the states to take any concrete political measure towards Palestine, except at the humanitarian level. But of course, I agree that labelizing these actors as non-state is not correct, since we know that first the Shia factions in Iraq are deeply integrated into the regular forces, and that the Houthi in Yemen administrate their own territory. So as it is the case for Hamas, these actors also enjoy a certain degree of autonomy from Iran, I think. Of course, there are huge differences between the Lebanese Hezbollah and the Iraqi Shia group, the Houthi, which might be, the Shia group must be much more closer to Iran than the Houthi. But generally speaking, I think we should be cautious in establishing a supposedly mechanical link between the Islamic Republic and these groups. This is at least what social scientists have shown, revealing the complex relationship these actors established with their external support sponsored. And if we rely to this work, we see that the Iranian involvement in Yemen is real, but still it is not structural, and Houthi forces are strong thanks to their own capacity at the local level. So we can question the statements of the U.S. National Security Advisor Sullivan saying that Iran can calm down or decide definitely to stop the attack against the ships or not. So, as in the case of Hamas, the Houthi shouldn't be seen as agents of the Islamic interest, or even though some experts continue to stipulate that these actors are only the puppets of Iran. So in many ways, these actors are autonomous, and the blurry relationship they have with the Iranians, the existence of a gray zone can also be seen as a strategic interest, or a diplomatic and strategic interest, both from these groups and for the Iranians, of course. So what can be said about the action of this group in Iraq, Yemen, Syria, is that the Palestinian question appears to be central for gaining legitimacy, not for the states, but for these proto-states actors. It is not by chance that these groups have emerged in countries which have been destabilized by the Americans, who have contributed to the collapse of these states. And the fragmentation of the territory in giving these new players the chance to emerge and to fight against the Israeli and American interests in the region. It is quite clear that 7 October attack was an opportunity for them to reinforce the internal legitimacy and to use their huge participation in this battle for local prestige and to compete with different political players or even vis-à-vis the central governments. So from there, I will try to make several assumptions about the future of Hamas governments and also about the future of Hamas relations with other countries. I will make here 5 different points. The first thing we can see is with this war is the emerging visibility of Hamas leaders in Beirut, particularly Osama Hamdan. And this visibility is not only at the communicational level, let's say, but it's also a military presence, since we know that Al-Qassam members also launch rockets from South Lebanon. Again, this ambiguity behind who is responsible for launching rockets could underline the ability of Hezbollah to blurry the lines and to limit the political and military implication against Lebanon. The second point is related to Hamas military success on the ground in Gaza, which might lead to Hamas official recognition at both the regional and international stage. This recognition could come through its entry into the PLO, which is still a priority for the movement, because being part of the PLO appears to be the only way to be recognized. And we can also assume that Hamas entry into the PLO could ultimately benefit also to other political players, including the US, that may find this solution as a way out, or a way, let's say, to deal with Hamas without having a direct contact with the movement. It can be also a form of arrangement for the US. 3, Palestine has again become a central issue for all political players in the region, and embarrassing many countries that are trying not to show their support for Israel and actually their active participation in this war. We recently see that Saudi Arabia and the Emirates have been reluctant to publicly expose their participation in the US coalition against Yemen. So it is also quite clear that the emergence of several fronts surrounding Israel will lead to a rebalancing shift against Israel in the region. For the war has also revealed not only the difficulty to implement the Abraham Accords, but also the complete failure of strategic exchanges between Arab states and Israel in terms of weapons exchanges and the sale of intelligence system. Israel can no longer protect itself, so these states can no longer appear as a country providing useful and efficient surveillance tools. Also, the attempt to confront the Houthi low-cost drone appears to be very costly, with a very high-cost intervention for the US. And finally, my last point is at the impact at the international levels. We see that Western countries' commitment to Israel is becoming very costly also. In many countries, the war has revealed a split between states and societies. Since the beginning of the intervention in Gaza, we see that the implication of the US, both in terms of sending weapons and the presence of American soldiers on the ground, is raising the issue of genocide complicity. And this harsh criticism is particularly strong among the young Americans who are now expressing officially and more loudly their detestation of Israel. It was also the case in France, a country which has prohibited all the demonstration, the huge demonstration in solidarity with Palestine in many cities, and which has also the biggest numbers of binational soldiers fighting in Gaza right now. So after talking about the need to build a sort of coalition against Hamas, the French president Emmanuel Macron also declared war against Israel was also our war. All this element, I think, ultimately made powers like China and Russia appeared much more balanced than the US. So I think I'll stop here. Thank you for listening. Be happy to answer to possible questions.
شكرا دكتورة ليلى. شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you for this presentation, which is excellent. Thank you for this presentation, which is an and in addition to the points that were raised by Dr. Mahjoob, before moving to Dr. Saban, I would like to remind our followers on the social media that they can place questions through commenting on the streaming of this seminar. Now we do go to Dr. Saban. He is a research professor and coordinator of the Gulf Studies program at the Gulf Studies Center at the University of Qatar. He holds a doctorate in political science from the University of Ottawa in the United States and a master's in international relations from the Middle East Technical University in Ankara and an MA in European Studies from the Center for European Integration Studies in University of Bonn, Germany. He previously worked at the Middle East Technical University and University Zakaria, top University of Economics and Technology. He published a number of studies and chapters books on Turkey's internal and foreign policies, energy and security politics, international, and was a regular contributor to international media. Today he will talk about the implications of the Gaza war on Gaza and through different statements and based on different statements and positions around.
Mohamed, also thank you, Ömer, for the invitation. And I congratulate the unit for putting together this event. I understand that this is a continuation of other events you have been conducting to look at different dimensions of the ongoing conflict. And you asked me to talk mainly about Turkish take on the developments. I will try to do that. But of course, without setting the regional context, the international context, it will be difficult to provide a better understanding of the Turkish position throughout the crisis. So to understand the Turkish policy, from the very beginning, we, as the Turkish scholars community here, get the question, where is Turkey? And my response has been always, where do you want Turkey to be? So this question is, I think, very relevant. As I go, I will try to develop on that, because asking where Turkey is easy, but placing Turkey properly and then from whose perspective in the region is a bit tricky, considering the evolution of Turkish policy in the region in general, especially in recent years. Basically, to understand it, I guess first we have to look at what I call the Turkish mode of conduct in regional crises with military dimension. I mean, one can say that the Turkish policy is always driven by a certain approach by certain actors, especially the strong character of the President Erdogan and his views. But overall, I think Turkey has a kind of mode of conduct in a regional crisis that involve not only the individual factors, the influence of the elite, but also a kind of state identity, state approach, state response to such regional crisis. To understand it, we need to look at the broader regional and international context. The second level to understand the Turkish reaction since October 7th is to look at the normalization wave, which has been also emphasized, and how it has been affected by this ongoing cycle of violence. And the third level is to look at the Turkish position on the Palestine issue historically, especially the trajectory of Turkish-Israeli relationship in the last decade or so, especially since the notorious Mavi Marmara incident. And if we can put Turkish foreign policy against this background, I think it will give us a better understanding. And briefly, I mean, much has been said by Dr. Mahjoob and Leila and others about the regional context, how it changed, transformed the regional context, the global implications. Obviously, the main narrative in the region was the normalization or reset or de-escalation, however one call it, which was symbolized by the Abrahamic Accords. And from a Turkish point of view, as we will recall, Turkey was the odd one out when the regional normalization started. Turkey was openly criticizing certain regional actors for pressing ahead with Israel as part of the Abrahamic Accords, and openly criticized. It was because of the unique position of Turkey at the time. Turkey also had its own issues with other regional actors. But as Turkey was underlining back at the beginning of the Abraham Accords process, without addressing the fundamental security issues, political, social issues in the region, you cannot have a top-down approach to regional security. I guess what happened since then, we were trying to forget that there was this issue, Palestinian issue. It popped up. It came back. The kind of ghosts we were trying to leave behind are back, so to speak. And I looked at the events. You had the flyers of previous events. In 2020, you organized an event on the Netanyahu-Trump deal. And now, whatever we were trying to say, that this kind of an approach to regional security is not sustainable, because you ignore the bottom-up reality of inherent security and social and political development issues. It's back on the agenda. It, in a sense, proves the Turkish argument from the very beginning that without a comprehensive approach to regional issues, regional problems, without a just solution to the Palestinian question based on a two-state paradigm, you cannot really have a regional framework that's sustainable. So in that sense, when we look at the reaction of Turkey, at the time, Turkey was the odd one out, was criticizing, but as I will discuss later, at a certain point, Turkey also started to normalize its own relations with the Gulf actors on the one side, but also Israel on the other side. So this also changed the discussion. The second observation I can make about the regional implications of this crisis is about the so-called strategic autonomy of especially the Gulf actors, the regional actors. So Leila talked about the non-state actors, but also the state actors. So the big talk prior to this had been about the rising visibility, power, weight of the regional actors, especially Gulf actors on the regional scale, especially global scale, their strategic autonomy vis-a-vis the United States, especially when we also recall the discussions about reintegration of the Assad regime back into the Arab League. So when we were talking about this, there was also this discussion about the relative weight of the United States in the region. To what extent the strategic autonomy of the regional actors can be positioned against the penetration of the United States in the region. I think it creates a new reality at this point that all the talk about the U.S. living or not living, declining leverage of the United States, we see that the U.S. still exercises an important leverage. I think we have seen it in the case of the normalization of Syria, what we may call the stopping power of the United States. Maybe constructively, the United States could not exercise leverage to solve the crisis in Syria, but was able to stop the Arab process. It's important. Again, here we see in a different way the United States can shape the regional response to the Israeli aggression, the inhumane approach to the conflict, so on and so forth. So this is also an important reminder for Turkey, because Turkey has its own issues with the West and with the United States, which Turkey has to keep in mind. So Turkey cannot frame its response independent of its own problems with the West. I also agree with Dr. Mahjoob about the Saudi-Iran normalization. It's still holding. And unlike in the previous cycles of violence, there is no competition for regional leadership over the Palestine issue. Let's put it this way, I guess. So in that sense, Turkey is also playing along. Previously, in different instances, when the issue was up, who's going to lead the Palestinian cause, the regional issue? Because different actors with claims to regional leadership, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, Iran, obviously they are trying to instrumentalize it as part of their regional leadership bid. So in this crisis so far, we see that this did not repeat, and Turkey is also playing along in the sense that Turkey, in a sense, respected, quote unquote, the Saudi leadership over it with this Riyadh summit, and later taking part in this contact group of Islamic countries, Arab League contact group. So Turkey is also respecting this normalization process. And then the drift between the West and the region, I guess it will continue. Anti-Israeli sentiments since the Second Intifada, there was a recent poll announced, they are on the rise. Anti-American sentiments are on the rise. And I guess, as I said, Turkey has its own set of issues with the West, how to position itself. So this crisis will also come with certain implications for the question of what's Turkey's place in the West, in addition to what's Turkey's place in the region. And then the other implication of this conflict globally, I would say, is this erosion of the so-called norm-based normative international order, especially regarding the regulation of the use of force. What is the legitimate use of force? What is terrorism? What is anti-terrorism? Respecting basic international humanitarian law, things like that. So with the conflict in Ukraine, already certain established rules and practices have been eroded. Now this sets a new stage, Israeli aggression and the Western reaction to it, blatant violations of basic international humanitarian law, and the Western readiness and ease with which to just accept it, don't criticize what's going on, is unbearable. And I think it's undermining this international order. The discussions we have about the norm-based order versus a more realist order where powerful can dictate as it wants. So it opens up a new phase, deepens the trends that were already there. So it also has implications for how Turkey sees things, because at the same time, when we are looking at this part of the globe, Turkey is also concerned about other potential flashpoints The conflict in Ukraine is still ongoing, despite the stalemate. And in the Caucasus context, we have seen Armenia-Azerbaijan conflict. So I think to read the broader international environment is also important from a Turkish point of view. So considering this environment, what was Turkish reaction? It was more of a kind of cautious reaction initially, kept it at a low level, but over time, as we have seen, Turkey also escalated the rhetoric and direct criticism of the Israeli actions and the leadership, and directly targeted, as you will, most of you probably did follow, the kind of language the President Erdogan used to criticize Israeli actions, especially Netanyahu. But despite that, as I said at the very beginning, especially Palestinian friends, colleagues, were expecting more from Turkey, so to speak. And that's the question. But then what is this more? There is no clear definition of this more. What Turkey could have done beyond facilitating humanitarian assistance, like there is a kind of airlift of wounded people to be treated in Turkish hospitals, this and that, and reiterating the support and naming and shaming Israeli human rights violations. What is more? This more is not clear. So this is where I guess Turkey is acting along with the regional normal. So this is where, again, Turkey is not, at this point, being the outlier from the regional normal. This is, I think, partly related to the recent normalization drive in the region and also in the Turkish foreign policy. As I had indicated earlier, initially Turkey was against the Abrahamic Accords process and then openly criticized, but especially since 2021, Turkey had also its own reset of its problematic relations with the regional actors, and including Israel, and went for the de-escalation route and realigned with the regional dynamics. So I guess here Turkey is trying to harmonize this relationship. As I just mentioned, it's part of this contact group of foreign ministers from Islamic and Arab League countries to visit different international capitals to raise the issue. So that's important compared to previous crises. Turkey did not challenge, question the Saudi informal leadership in this crisis so far by attending the Riyadh meeting and also other steps. And in the previous crisis, there was also this question about receptivity of Turkey in the region, the Arab street versus the leaders, the regimes. So when the proactive Turkish engagement in the region started in 2007-8, especially with the Hamas coming to rule Gaza, one of the criticisms we used to hear coming from the region, especially this part of the region, was Turkey is interfering in the Arab affairs. But at the same time, the popularity of Turkey in the eyes of the Arab street was there, but at the regime level, more political level in some countries was not. So still, I guess this dynamic is there. We don't know how the crisis will evolve over time. We don't know what's the Israel endgame. So there is this ambiguity Israel is using in a very pragmatic and opportunistic manner. So is Israel just trying to rescue the hostages? Will it there, or will it go for elimination of Hamas, elimination of entire Gaza, driving people out of Gaza? And it keeps going, and depending on the end game, it will have a major different regional reverberations. It may lead to a new wave of regional radicalization. It may also undermine the state-society balance relationship. It may lead to different reactions in the Arab street. So far we have seen that Turkey did not play into this tension, which was from time to time the case in the previous instances. Lastly, let me talk about the third dimension I just hinted at earlier at the beginning. The overall trajectory of Turkish-Israeli relations in the last decade or so. I mean, as I referred to earlier, the Mavi Marmara incident, which came in 2008, 9, 10 as a result of the escalation of the situation, and which led to the freezing of Turkish-Israeli diplomatic relations, and there were different efforts to solve this issue. There were different U.S. efforts to normalize. There were back and forth, but eventually, in the last 1.5 years or so, Turkey has been taking steps to also mend the ties with Israel. My own take on this question, which we can expand later, I guess you are looking at the time as well, especially in the last 10-15 years, the Turkish-Israeli relationship has been also characterized as some sort of a moral politics pursued by the Turkish leadership. So in international relations, we always have this discussion about identity, interests, tension, whether a country's foreign policy is driven by more moral concerns or more strategic realpolitik concerns. This is a case where I think the identity dimension, the strategic dimension, from time to time were in tension, but still both were shaping the Turkish policy. Openly, I mean, I have always argued about this issue in the following way. As long as Turkey will keep insisting on this moral dimension, its policy on the Palestinian question, there is no real permanent normal relations in Turkish-Israeli relations. It will be more like what we from time to time call compartmentalized relationship. Unless you solve this problem, maybe in other areas you will find cooperation, like energy, Eastern Mediterranean energy resources, trade, regional security. But this issue will always remain there. Turkey will not give it up. And this is also beyond actually the current government. The broader Turkish society level, there is, as you know, a strong support and sympathy for the Palestinian cause. So as long as Israeli trajectory doesn't change on the Palestine issue, this Turkish-Israeli normalization will always be incomplete. And what has been happening since October 7th is just another blow to the prospects for a stronger normalization. Shall I stop here because you keep looking at me? Okay, yeah.
You done?
Okay, so I mean that's where I can. And regarding what potential roles Turkey can play, we can, I guess, discuss later. Okay, thank you.
شكرا جزيلا.
Thank you, Dr. Shava, for your presentation. And as you said, yes, we sure have questions about the Turkish role, and I think that the audience might have also questions. We have room for questions now, and I would now remind again our followers on the social media and the people who are watching us that they can ask questions through the live stream by commenting on the live stream. I'll start with the questions that with a question that we received through the social media platform, and then we open the floor for the questions from the audience here in this room. The first question is from Mr. Ali. Why is the Arab states' point is weak in towards supporting Palestine, so that they did not suspend their relations with Israel? So the question is for everybody, and the comment is very long here, but it's a question. Dr. Mahjoob Zweiri spoke about the non-conflict existent between Saudi Arabia and Iran about Gaza, whether because the Saudi is not disagreeing with Iran in regard of Gaza. Don't you think that this is derived from that Gaza for the first time is the base element here through the Tufan al-Aqsa process or war. Now we'll open the floor for the audience in this room. Thank you for the presenters and for the panelists.
سؤالي للدكتور محجوب كنت أحب أسمع شيء عن موقف النظام السوري.
The Syrian point, which is the biggest silent body or entity in this war. Nobody have silence in this war except them. And there are other procedures that the Syrian government took against the Palestinians, where the Palestinians cannot own anything in Syria now, and this is very weird. They cannot own anything, land or house. And Al-Assad said again, Syria is not a hotel, or Syria is not a hotel. So how do you comment on the Syrian role in this war? Do we take more questions and then we answer? Yes. Dr. Omar Ashur. Thank you for this symposium, which is very valuable. I will transfer to English in order for everybody to have easier
for Dr. Mahjoob and maybe Dr. Leila, and the Turkish response for Dr. Saban. So now it's escalating in a sense that there was so the Houthis are striking. Their long range was all intercepted or missed. Their short range strikes were 50-50. Some of them got the ships. The Galaxy Leader one was very impressive, an air assault with the Mi-17. They landed on the ship. The ship didn't have anything to defend itself with, but they still did it. So that's on one end. On the other end, we're talking now what's available is 3 American destroyers, 1 British destroyer, 1 French frigate, and the Israelis sent one corvette. And they are saying they will send like half of their navy. So their navy is not big, so it's 7 corvettes. So they're sending about 3 or 4. But now it's 10. The new coalition for Operation Guardian of Prosperity is about 10 states. And there are 9 states that were not identified, but most Middle East experts would guess them. So we're talking about a 19 strong coalition with a significant naval force. The area is big. So the Aden is the Gulf of Aden is the size of Iraq. The Red Sea is the size of Syria, Palestine, Jordan, and Lebanon together. So you can have 20 destroyers there, and you would not even notice them if you're in there. But it means that probably they will go for a land attack to destroy the source of the launching of the missiles. If this happens, then 3 out of Iran's main regional non-state actors are under attack. The Houthis, Hezbollah, and Hamas. So what will be the response from the Iranian side and from the Turkish side?
شكرا دكتور عمر. سيف ناخذ سؤالين وبعدها
جانب الإيراني. إذا ناخذ we take 2 more questions
for this briefing and for the lecture, and I'm going directly to ask Dr. Saban about Turkey, the Turkish foreign policy, which didn't take any serious action against Israel since October the 7th. And as you mentioned, as I'm quoting here from you, it was a cautious reaction. And here I'm asking about the explanations of that. But regarding this discourse, the discourse by President Erdogan in the parliament, and he mentioned that more than one time that you killed children, but there was no serious action even from cutting or boycotting the exports to Israel. And beside that, we found many products were being exported, and so far they are being exported to Israel without any governmental action or governmental comment. And the only comment came from the government was from the Minister of Foreign Affairs, Hakan Fidan, when he said that October the 7th will not affect that much the relationship between Turkey and Israel. So in the light of that, and also the Arab people, I don't mean the Arab government, so the Arab people felt so much bad about this reaction because they were expecting more than this from Turkey. As also you have mentioned what happened in Marmara ships in 2008 and 9 and 10. So how do you explain this very low reaction to Israel genocide going in Gaza? And do you think it is it is not a big reaction because they are like scared from the West somehow? There is an increasing interest between Turkey and the West after Erdogan came to the power again in 2023. So he doesn't want this to be affected in a bad way. And also the last question, and it's going to be very very brief, to Leila. Since you have mentioned that Yahya Sinwar came to the power in Gaza in 2017 as the president of Hamas inside Gaza, did it affect the foreign policy of Hamas with the actors? I mean, with the alliance like Iran and Syria after they restored the relationships with them again. So did it affect based on the personal level of Yahya Sinwar? And thank you so much.
Thank you. The last one we will take from Ahmed in this group, and then we will take another.
شكرا جزيلا على
شكرا.
المداخلات القيمة.
Thank you for the interventions, and I have small comments and questions. I'll start with Leila. Actually, Hamas movement is a bureaucratic body which is very big now, other than the establishment stage where in 1987 were they established, and when they also after 20 or 2000 as an actor, especially after the invasion of Iraq by US and building alliance with Syria and Iran, and having a different shape of alliances that helped in the building their strength in military level. It needs, each of these stages needs analysis on the political and military level. But the last stage that we witnessed October 7th, from my point of view, when this war is ended and we open the books again, we'll see that there is a miscalculation, especially in the military, aspect. Hamas, Al-Qassam wanted to get 10 to 12 soldiers to negotiate, but they were shocked that they found this big number of, Gaza team or the Gaza troops. So understanding the decision of war and going towards this kind of military contact, we speak about leaders who are prisoners before Yahya Sinwar, outside Salih al-Aruri. They were prisoners, and their psychology, in their mind, they have the relationship between the prisoner and the prison, the prisoner, the police, or the person who is arresting them. So this might lead Israel, and it might have implications regionally that made Israel have no choice other than sitting to negotiate with Hamas movement. So my question to Leila, how much we can understand the psychological dimension, having this leaders of Hamas with that they were all arrested before, and Sinwar in his first statement said that we should start by putting the list of arrested people in order to clear the prisons first. Dr. Mahjoob, Iran, their role in this battle or this war is no different than other parties, which is the named as the resistant dimension, and the propaganda that was given by the Irani in Jerusalem and going to revenge for Soleimani killing or the death of Soleimani. So don't you think that this is only limited to Iraq, Syria, and Lebanon? So yes, Iran says that these are our fields and this was what we should maintain. But in Gaza, there is a military support that is given to Gaza, especially that the war that you mentioned about the shadow war between Israel and Iran. So made Iran really very angry by assassinating a number of scholars and targeting the nuclear plans in Iran. So Iran, we see them now in this war very quiet and playing a political role. Even if the support of London with Gaza and the other capitals in Europe is different than the people's support. So people are. Iran always say that the people are united and there is a strategic alliance that support them and put them together with Hamas movement and the resistance. And in relation to Syria or the Turkish, I agree with what you said or Saif when he asked you the first days of the war, the political dialogue of Turkish dialogue was very late, not like what we used to have when they used to support the Palestinian case. And we're speaking about the complex relation between Hamas and Turkey. There is a political area that and people in Istanbul, for the leaders of Hamas there, the only thing that we saw when they have Ismail Haniya bow as sajdat shukr for God, but we didn't find any other things related to Hamas inside Istanbul. So don't you think that this is a paper that Turkey used recently or in the last period in order to the support of Israel and for some Kurdish parties in Syria or in Iraq, and also the normalization of Turkey and going back to the strategy to Ahmed Dawood Oglo, where his dialogue was very loud in criticizing Erdogan and his behavior towards Gaza. Don't you think that the normalization of Turkey with Saudi Arabia and other places needs a price, and this price means that they should build again relationship with the resistant in Palestine and dealing with Palestine resistant with another approach? Thank you, Dr. Ahmed.
Dr. Leila, we will give you the floor, please.
Should I answer to all the questions? I try.
Yes, yeah.
You want me to?
Answer the questions that you have got, and then we will move on to Dr. Mahjoob.
Okay. I can't see the room anymore, but it doesn't bother me. But just to let you know that it's only
we see you clearly and we hear you.
Okay. For the first question about the Arab state weakness in supporting Palestine, I would just go back to the historical processes in the 1917s, when the Arab states started their consolidation, what we call the consolidation of the Arab state, trying to isolate themselves as much as possible from the transnational effects of the Palestinian question. But of course, this isolation was not always easy. And states like Jordan, Syria, and Egypt did not really succeed in building this isolation toward Palestine. But I would say that this difficulty to isolate themselves and to try to win the support or to get the the support from the US. So these states are still between the need to keep safe external support from the US and the duty to respond to the Palestinian question and the demand from their own citizens to demonstrate for Palestine. So this dilemma is still very accurate, and I think if we go back to the 17th, we can understand the continuity of this trajectory. For Hamas, I think I have two questions regarding Hamas. The first is about Yahya Sinwar and I forgot about the question, maybe the psychological dimension. The last question about October 7, is it miscalculation? I think I cannot tell you is like how historical books will talk about this attack in the future. But I guess you are right in the sense that the October attack was, even though it was really well prepared, it in a sense went beyond the Al-Qassam brigades, as we saw, and that many people from civilians in Gaza came to attack also Israelis. So this is you're right. I think this reveals that.
Désolé, je ne peux pas faire ça sur votre Mac.
I'm sorry, the laptop is talking to myself. This reveals, as you said, maybe the difficulties of Hamas trying to implement this this attack, but at the same time, I think this attack also, as we said already, showed a huge support among at the Arab regional stage and also international. So it's both at the same time. And even though in the beginning we supposed that having civilians hostages in Gaza was a huge burden for Hamas, I think the current events showed finally that it was also something strategic, and Hamas could exchange these people and to lead the battle because they have a huge number of both civilians and soldiers. So I will agree and disagree with you on this. And I think Saif Islam asked me something, but it's somewhere on my paper. But
here is, I think Dr. Ahmed asked here.
Yes, the foreign policy of Hamas, yes, of course. And what you're saying is right, is that Yahya Sinwar has changed has made possible to get closer to the Iranians because he has also close ties with Hezbollah, and the ties to get back with the Iranian alliance was also made it possible through Hezbollah. So he's not the only one. He has also his close colleagues, let's say Osama Hamdan, but also Ghazi Hamad. So all these people helped to build again the alliance with the Iranians and Syria, of course. And the last question on the Houthis, so I'm not, I will not, to answer your question, I would maybe step back and say that if we look at the relationship and the military escalation between the South Lebanon, Hezbollah and Israel, I think it can lead us to understand that, of course, this escalation might be possible in Yemen. And I think both are related. So if we look at what's happening in Israel and South Lebanon, you can understand what's happening in Yemen. So we see that in the last 2 or 3 days, I think Hezbollah has targeted the dome, the Iron Dome. So it's pretty new comparing to the last weeks. And at the same time, the Israelis targeted more deeply in South Lebanon territories, and used also aeroplane like the one they used in the war in 2006, and it's also pretty new. So I would answer on the Lebanon front because I think it's connected to Yemen.
Thank you. Thank you, Leila.
شكرا جزيلا. خليني أبدأ
Thank you. Let me start with the issue of the miscalculation of Hamas. I wrote in English a short article about that, but I think what happened in the 7th of October is based on 4 elements. One, the change of the political leadership in Gaza and the coming of Yahya Sinwar. Number 2, what is going on in the West Bank and trying to dry the Hamas resources in the West Bank and this could takes me to the third, and also the pressure that the Hamas base exercised pressure on Hamas regarding what is going on against our brothers and colleagues in the West Bank. So there was a pressure exercised by the Hamas Foundation or Hamas base in Gaza, and there was a criticism that you have changed into a new Palestinian authority in Gaza, sitting doing nothing. And I think, or I remember in 2006, I published an article in English about the Hamas success in the election. And I said in that article, Hamas was not wanting to have power or to be in the authority or to have the power, but it would be as a resistant movement. But what happened in 2007, it was engaged or it was involved and it was forced to rule the Gaza Strip. And the fourth factor relates to the Israeli policy. That is an embodiment of Netanyahu's policy. And in Gaza, there was this statement: what is the difference between Hamas and other Arab regimes? This from 2017 may be initiated or generated a pressure on the Hamas leadership to take a certain action on how to attack Israel, whether the operation would be difficult on the ground, but it was easy. And one of the Hamas brigades, and I think 60 persons from Hamas brigade went to the settlements and took a group and took them again to Gaza and backward to Gaza to settlements and took another cohort or another group, because Israel at that night was in a case of abnormal relaxation at that night. So Hamas did this because they were under pressure to act in a certain way that is different from the Arab regimes and the Palestinian Authority and other things happening in the region. The second issue is Saudi Arabia and Iran. Let's remember that Saudi Arabia has chosen other alternatives ever since Al-Ula agreement to level the conflicts in their area or in the region. Have you followed up about the Saudi statements about the conflict in Gaza? Never they have mentioned Hamas. Everybody is talking about the Palestinian people. And the first time we see a Saudi position in its foreign policy is exactly the same as the Iranian position, the Qatari position. They all talked in the same way about the Palestinian people and not mentioning Hamas. But in 2008 and in 2014, they used to talk about Palestinian organizations or factions. And this is to bring to the 0 point the issue of conflicts, because that might have an economic or political price. Let's remember that Saudi Arabia entered a new development process to be in a certain economic development. The issue of the World Cup, the Expo, organizing events and conferences, all this requires a case of stability and not to engage in any ongoing conflicts in the region. And this has pushed Saudi Arabia to adopt maybe more calculated positions and stance. Also, when Aramco was hit by the Houthis rockets, the United States said or stated that it has nothing to do with Aramco, and that is a Saudi interest. So this reflects the Saudi position. Why Saudi Arabia didn't want to engage in any regional conflict, and they opted to be more rational in this. As for the Saudi Arabia and Iran, both of them felt, especially Saudi Arabia, there was a talk about normalizing with Israel to benefit from this situation. If there is any speech in the future to build on a clear ground, because it has the Arab initiative in 2002, and it has a process of normalization with Israel, and with all these pressures, how can Saudi Arabia face all this, and this would improve the Saudi position in any future talks in regard to normalization with Israel. Iran is benefiting too much from this situation because it fails the project of normalization in the region, and at least the region has become cold, and this helps Iran in the security dimension very much. As for the Syrian regime, its alternatives are clear. He attended the Arab summit for one for one goal. As Assad has a personal attitude against Hamas and the security institutions around him. He doesn't want to adopt any position to support the Palestinians, and the Syrian army was under conviction against the Palestinian issue, to support Palestine. So this advanced position of Iran to what is going on in Palestine, but it doesn't care for the position or for the stand of the Syrian president. And here we come to the influence of Iran on imposing its influence on its allies, either because it does not want to take that position, or maybe the situation does not allow it to do so. As for the gate of grief, or what we call Bab al-Mandeb, the vessels that are heading towards Israel. And here, the United States has no justification to do what it has done. They are not saying that we are not against merchant shipping in the strait, but the United States is trying to make or to create a coalition against what Houthis are doing. And on the other side, the Houthis saying that if there is any vessel heading or sailing towards Egypt, no problem. But they are saying that we are not against the international navigation, till now, some vessels are going or are sailing through the strait. But the United States is trying to benefit from this situation in order to achieve other goals in the region, especially in their relation with the Houthis. And the last sentence here, what the United States has done till now, when they call the common group, the CFT, including 34 countries, 19 of which are now in the coalition that has been or that is created by the United States. It is an attempt, and this is an attempt by the United States and Israel just to make Gaza issue is a global issue, not a global or indicating or arousing or world war.
Omar had to leave. Regarding the task force.
He apologizes.
Yeah, indeed. As things stand at this point, it looks more like a maritime mission. And he asked for the implications of potential ground incursion. I don't know, at this stage it looks pretty unlikely. We were discussing earlier to open another front, a ground operation will change things. It may most likely remain mainly maritime operation. Turkey, in principle, wouldn't, because, I mean, to the extent that it was framed in terms of protecting the freedom of navigation for international trade. But if it is used to make a bigger case, as Dr. Mahjoob suggested, to be instrumentalized by the United States to take further action to confront Iran. Of course, it will run the risk of further escalation in the region. Probably Turkey would be concerned. But also there is a precedent, as you would remember, in the past anti-piracy operations. There were similar instances from Somalia. Of course, there is a kind of background, some infrastructure to build on, forming such joint naval military forces to find such non-state actors, indirect threats. I guess we will see, but I don't expect it to turn into a kind of ground immersion. Maybe they can hit the ground targets. It also opens a new level of escalation. Regarding the question from our friends concerning the Turkish role, this was exactly the dilemma I was trying to highlight. Good that you share the dilemma and the tension you also reflect between the Arab street and Arab leadership. And this tension Turkey cannot solve on its own. Turkey has to tread a fine line in that tension. And Turkey also has to tread a fine line between its strategic national interests versus the moral side of the story. I mean, you cannot expect Turkey to do more than your own leaders do. So that's what I was trying to emphasize. I mean, Dr. Mahjoob mentioned about how Hamas was not used in the statements, but it was the President Erdogan who openly said, I wouldn't call it a terrorist organization. Hamas is an organization that's formed by Mujahideen fighting for their own land. Openly said this, and in the very same statement, openly said that Israel shouldn't act like an organization, meaning Israel is moving beyond the responsibilities expected from a state, committing all sorts of violations of basic human rights and international humanitarian law. So in its own condemnation of Israel, I guess the kind of language used, the argument to keep Israel accountable through international mechanisms is strong. Regarding the exports, it raises the issue of sanctions, and in the Turkish context, it's a delicate issue because, I mean, using this tool is always a risky thing. Even when we had the freezing of diplomatic relations with Israel, the trade continued. So the trade is conducted by the private businesses, private companies. No, it's not, no.
But the government can do something.
No, that's what I am trying to say. Even in the past, when there was diplomatic freezing, the trade kept going. When you look at the figures about Turkish-Israeli trade, it continued. So if you want to use trade as a weapon, it's a new level. You can, but there are implications of it at the moment. And in its own foreign policy, that's why in my presentation, I said Turkish response is part of its broader foreign policy traditions. Turkey has always been worried about using sanctions as a tool against itself, by itself as well. So we need to be careful. Regarding the goods found, all these footages and pictures that circulated in social media outlets, I mean, I remember the same conversation we had when there was the conflict in Syria, in the areas controlled by even Daesh at the time. You would find Turkish products. I remember the Hash forces in Iraq were using this to say, you see, Turkey is supporting this. You will find the Turkish products in Damascus, in the regime-controlled areas. You would find Turkish products all around the world. I remember in a similar meeting in Süleymaniye in 2015 or 16, I said, even the water was coming from Turkey. So showing a Turkish product somewhere in Israel doesn't show that the Turkish government is supporting. So we need to be careful with this disinformation kind of footages. And then we see the same tactic used by Israel outlets, showing products supposedly delivered by Turkey to Hamas. So such footages, pictures cannot, I think, help us make a bigger argument about Turkey supporting. We need to be careful about this. Regarding there was a question about particularly Hamas and Turkey. I couldn't, the translation was not clear, but on that question as well, recently, for instance, the spokesperson of the presidential office, Mr. Akif Çağatay Kılıç, he was on CNN International. Openly, he said, yeah, Turkey will always be open to Hamas members. You remember there was, for instance, this statement from Israeli, one of the defense ministers, that they will go after all the Hamas members. And Turkey openly said that on Turkish territory, any such attempt will be retaliated properly. I think the Turkish statements have been clear. There were more than just what our friend said regarding Hakan Fidan's statement, the relations with Israel. So there were many statements that if Israel escalates, if Israel takes certain actions, they will be responded in kind and retaliated. So in that sense, I think the balance relationship need to be taken into account. I mean, at the end of the day, giving a personal, individual reaction is one thing, but conducting the state policy is another thing, which has to take into account the regional realities, international realities.
Perfect. Thank you, Shaban. Well, we will سوف نأخذ مجموعة أخرى من الأسئلة. لدينا وقت.
Other group of questions or another set of questions, as long as we have less than 20 minutes. Comment. The Iranian position. Some of my brothers asked about the Iran's and Assad party. What relates Iran position is the national feeling in that country, because, or in other words, the Islamic Republic of Iran knows as an experience occurred once in the 16th century, and it ruled for about 200 years. And that experience maybe vanished until the 20th century. So so Iran is not ready to go to any other experience that may eliminate its status now or to another time to another time. Therefore, all their positions apply to their position or their attitude from Hamas, nuclear industry with Saudi Arabia. So the issue of sustainability and existence is of concern for Iran. Thank you.
We have a question from the social media from Mohammed Husni to Dr. Leila in relation to the relation between Houthi and Iran. Can the Houthi open this front on the sea with the U.S. Depending only on their strength? And then we go back now for the audience in the room. Thank you. My name is Munif al-Za'bi, advisor in politics of science with some and innovation with some international organizations. Actually, I want to go back to the title of the symposium and speaking about the repercussion and the implications. The repercussion to what's happening here now in Gaza is beyond the implications, security implications, and the political implications that the speakers focused on. There are other implications, humanitarian implications, 20,000 martyrs, 50,000 injured casualties. The majority are maybe disabled after weeks or months. There are environmental implications, water implications. 0.10 million of Gazian, they don't have access to water resources, healthy water resources. These are implications on Gaza's people and the region, and the international trend is very dangerous. So Also, there are also academic implications. The 8 universities in Gaza were destroyed, and I have a number of 400 academia personnel who lost their life since the war started. So, with all respect, focusing on the security and political aspect, maybe this is the general trend of this symposium, and we understand that. But when we speak about implications, so implications are beyond non-state actors' position, our state actors' position now and the future also. I wish also from the organizer also to divide the symposium to 2 parts. One of it is political and security aspect or dimension, and the other dimension speaks about the life dimension and the implications. Do you have question? If you give me a half an idea until I finish my comment and then the question. So when we speak about the nuclear threatening, as mentioned by one of the ministers, to delete Gaza from the map. So how would we speak about the implications and overcome the threatening of using a nuclear weapon to destroy 2.3 million people, eliminate them? So the question, very short, and question from the context of what I said, why do we divide in our institutes between what is political and what is political siyasati? That leads to the political. So until when we have this distinguish. Also in USA, so they are distinguishing between what is humanitarian that leads or touch the life of people and how much is affecting the politics. So maybe we are living a very full life of dividing between the humanitarian aspect and the political aspect that also have the implication on the life of people. So I wish that I can hear a way to bridge this gap. Sorry for taking a long time. Thank you very much. This is the first time that a question is addressed to the organizers. I will answer you later after a while. Thank you very much for your symposium. My question is addressed to Dr. Leila. I'll speak English in order for her to understand better. Dr. Leila, are you with us? He's asking.
Already stressed on 2 major important stages where Hamas showed its serious willingness to get rid of the governance in Gaza Strip, which was in 2014 and in 2017. And perhaps one of the reasons that explains this is the shift in Hamas leaders' mindset, which believe that the source of legitimacy, as you have mentioned and stressed on legitimacy, so the source of legitimacy is not to be part of the authority, but to have a strong armed forces on the ground. However, we have seen a different phenomena in 2021, where Hamas showed its also serious intention and willingness to be engaged in the Palestinian internal election. And perhaps after this war ends on Gaza Strip, maybe one of the main results of this war, if Hamas is not defeated, and we believe so, is for Hamas to be again part of the Palestinian Authority and perhaps PLO. And I do believe that maybe its ambition is to be the leading factor in PLO. So how would we explain this paradox when you talked about the source of legitimacy? Can we say that the source of legitimacy for Hamas is both, is to have a forced
an armed forces, as well as to, and maybe this is a tool also for a political, for the political aim, which is to be the leading party in the Palestinian issue. Thank you very much.
شكرا جزيلا. سوف أبدأ من نفسي بالإجابة.
I'll
سؤال
start
مهم
by myself
جدا.
in answering. This is a very important question, but I invite you to watch the lectures of the Arab Center after 7th of October. We had conducted an important session about the political humanitarian implications on the Gaza war, and the strategic unit studies had a symposium before that focusing actually on the dimensions of intelligence and army or soldier, and this here we are focusing on the regional implications and bridging the gap between all of those concepts and linking them together in the security aspect. And this would need more time, rather longer than this symposium. And I invite you to visit us in where we speak about the security, solid security, their classical meaning, and the soft meaning. And we discussed that critically. So the Institute discussed those topics with different aspects. And yes, I agree with you. The implications are very important, and humanitarian, academic implications are very important. And they are beyond the analysis of military analysis that are accurate. Or give me 1 minute, please. I understand the activities, and I follow up with your activities that are derived from the center. But we speak about this symposium. When we look at this title, and you speak about the implications, security, regional and international security, security repercussion, regional and international repercussion, this does not indicate that the topic of the symposium is only limited to the political aspect and the security aspect and the concept that you explained. Maybe you can change the title to speak about the point that you are addressing. I understand and I am aware of what the center is doing in the soft security, and I'm following up that, and I recognize that. But I refer to the title that was selected for this symposium, that is not reflecting the and the discussion does not reflect the comprehensivity of the title or the topic. Thank you very much. Thank you for this comment, and we'll put it into consideration. Dr. Mahjoob, if you have any comment. I think that what is happening in Gaza now, away from the day-to-day follow-up, is to ability to destroy all the attempts to change the nature of Gaza, and Israel going back under a different umbrella to occupy Gaza. So if you notice, within the 30 last years, all the solutions that given by Oslo to the two states solution, all of them failure, because they want to redefine the occupation, occupying of other areas. So meaning that the reoccupation of Israel. So we should focus now about the next stage, that Israel should not be allowed to continue on what's doing it's doing after the war. Dr. Leila?
Just une seconde. Je dois signer. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know how far the question on the Houthi and Iran was addressed to me, but I would just say that I don't know if the coalition can destroy the Houthi, but the only thing maybe I can say is that one of the lessons of this war in Gaza is the fact that the military superiority cannot win this kind of war, and that it is the case actually in Gaza, but it can also be the case for Yemen. And thank you very much for the question on the source of legitimacy for Hamas and the distinction between the PA and the PLO. Those institutions are very different. And when I was saying that Hamas doesn't want to play the official institutional game is, of course, the PA and not the PLO, and those are really different. The PA comes from the Oslo Agreement, so even though Hamas has always played already played this game and tried to play its legitimacy through the PA, it quickly realized that it's not possible anymore. And also, maybe we should stress that the PA is really linked to its security coordination with Israel, so it has no legitimacy among the Palestinian people, and the PLO is supposed to represent the state of Palestine. So those institutions are really has to be distinguished. And thank you also for asking about the 2021 election, because actually what happened before the election, it was Hamas and Fatah agreed for elections because the compensation for Hamas not entering into the presidential election, competition for presidents, was the fact that Fatah would agree in letting Hamas entering the PLO. So again, this election, maybe we can make an assumption and say that Hamas knew at the end that maybe Mahmoud Abbas will not be able to hold the election in Jerusalem, and he will be the one who will appear as not willing to compete because he's actually scared to fail in the election.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Dr. Saban, do you have anything to add? Nothing. Perfect. Thank you very much. شكرا جزيلا. لا يسعني إلا أن أشكر
the presenters or the speakers, Dr. Mahjoob Zweiri, Dr. Leila Seurat, and Dr. Saban Kardas, and I would like also or invite you all to and other followers on the social media to follow to follow the seminars and lectures of the center in the beginning of the 2024 that covers a lot of topics, scientific, social, political, that relate to the Arab region and the world. Thank you, and we look forward to seeing you in upcoming seminars and lectures. Thank you.